It's Jason Rzucidlo reporting live in front of the Menlo Park Laboratory here at the Greenfield Village. And what can you tell us about this, Jim?
Well, this is one of the few important national structures that are here at Greenfield Village. Henry Ford collected a range of things here back in the 1920s, 30s, and into the 1940s, and this one was one of his crowning achievements. This group of buildings were moved and reconstructed from Menlo Park, New Jersey. This is where Thomas Edison set his would become world-famous laboratory. I worked here from 1876 to 1886. These were the 10 most productive years of his life. This is where he developed, amongst the most famous things, the electric lighting system. The light bulb was invented in this building here.
Okay, and what are some of the things inside the building today here at the village?
It represents the way it may have looked around 1880 or so, just after he had invented the lighting system and was starting to perfect it. So you'll see early lighting systems strung throughout the entire complex, including over to the Sarah Jordan boarding house, which is just down the street as it would have been originally. And the laboratory is just sort of laid out to show all those things that would have been going on at the same time. The second floor is especially fascinating with all the bottles of chemicals on the walls and some examples of his early phonographs and things like that. So, it's a very interesting exhibit, and Thomas Edison still today remains quite famous and something that people are very, very familiar with.
Okay, so this whole area here is Thomas Edison. There's a few other buildings here. What are inside those?
Each one had a role in the complex and were built at different times. The two brick buildings were built a little bit later. One is the library office building, and the large, long brick building is the machine shop, where they eventually would generate power to make the electricity. And then some of the little buildings, there's a glass blowing shop where all the glassware, some of it was actually made right on site. A little carpenter shop, a tiny little shack where they burn kerosene lamps to get carbon, which they used in a lot of the experiments. And, of course, the main laboratory building.
Okay. Anything else you would like to add here?
The setting now is a little bit different than it may have been in the time period. This was a rural community not too far from New York City in Menlo Park, New Jersey, and the fence you see around the complex would essentially have been put up to keep the cows and things out of it. This was a very rural setting, so the fence is to keep livestock and things out of the compound here.
Do you know approximately when this was added to the village?
This is one of the first buildings brought here, amongst the first group of things completed. So this would have been completed for the opening in October of 1929, along with the boarding house down the street. Yeah, we're getting close to 80 years now. So.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Welcome to the Menlo Park complex, where Thomas Edison and 60 of his men created all those wonderful inventions. We're in the area here where they worked on the filament for the light bulb. Unknown to most people, Edison did not create or invent the light bulb. 22 men worked on it for over a 40-year period before him. Actually, Edison made the light bulb viable. Now, what we want to talk about is the filament of the light bulb. Most people don't realize that Edison spent $100,000 sending men around the world looking for the filament of the light bulb. Such places as Japan, trying bamboo, trying spun gold, a man's beard hair even. Nothing worked for over a year and 1,000 experiments until something right under their nose was most effective, simple cotton sewing thread. So actually what they were using to darn the socks of the men who worked here at the Sarah Jordan boarding house is actually what ended up being the best thing. That covered with carbon. They would actually fire the filaments in these kilns here, and then they would grind up minerals to try to find the right solution or powder and solution to coat the filaments. They'd send a night watchman out here to the building to actually scrape carbon off of the lanterns to be able to use for the filament of the light bulb. So Edison did end up getting a successful light bulb. Eventually, it lasted 3,500 hours, but it started off, instead of a few seconds, lasting 13 and a half hours. Previous to that, it only lasted a few seconds, and Edison was quite thrilled when they waited up till the wee hours of the night to see that 13 and a half hours last that long. Well, I appreciate you visiting Thomas Edison's Menlo Park complex, and the only other thing that's worth mentioning here that is most notable right here would be the phonograph. And 8 left in the world, and we have one here that's actually an operating phonograph. So we encourage you to visit Greenfield Village here at the Henry Ford Museum.
In this laboratory, you also see that there's an organ in the back. That was a gift. That came from a cousin of Teddy Roosevelt, who had the Roosevelt Organ Company. And he was an admirer of Thomas Edison's work. And so it was delivered to Edison's home. Guess what? It wouldn't fit. It wouldn't fit in the house. So Edison said, tell you what, put it up here in the laboratory. So they set it up in the laboratory here. Now again, picture these 15 men working up here all hours of the day and night, and things are not going real smooth all the time. So you get a lot of frustration, some anger at times that this just isn't working. Edison would recognize that. He would wander back to the organ, sit down, and start playing the tune. Now, as the organ music would start, that would be a cue to the people, stop what you're doing. They would gather around, tell some stories, sing some songs, just relax. Then when Edison got up, that was the cue, okay, back to work now, guys. So what that was a good manager. He knew that if you want to get anything accomplished, the only way it's going to get done is through good, hard work. That's the only way it's going to get accomplished. But you also need those moments to kick back and just relax as well. So, good manager. So, Tom Edison was here visiting us on a couple of occasions. In 1927, he was here. He did a demonstration of his favorite invention. Does anyone recall what his favorite invention out of all his inventions? Anybody? You might have seen it downstairs. The phonograph. I heard it back here. Excellent. Yes. Phonograph was his favorite because he said that was his idea right from beginning to end. A lot of the other things were other inventors' ideas, and he would work on developing those, including the light bulb. But when he was here in 1927, we had an opportunity to record Tom Edison's voice. Would you like to hear that today?
Yes.
I'll play that for you, okay? This is Thomas Edison. He is 80 years old at the time of this recording, and this is what he spoke into his original phonograph.
The first words I spoke in the original phonograph. A little piece of practice poetry. Mary had a little lamb that speaks quite a snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb would sure go.
There you have it, on that momentous occasion. What else could you say, right? But Mary had a little lamb. He said that he had a speech prepared. When it came time for his speech, he was fumbling with the phonograph, and the tin foil tore. He got upset. He forgot the speech. As he got the phonograph going later on in that day, the first thing that came to mind was Mary had a little lamb. That's what he recited. And that was for our Golden Jubilee celebration, the kickoff of Greenfield Village here, okay? Tom Edison was seated in this chair. Alongside of here, there was President Hoover, Henry Ford, Francis Yell, who worked for Tom Edison, was here. Wide variety of famous people that were here that day. But when Edison was here in this chair, he did a demonstration similar to what I did for you just a moment ago. As he got up and was leaving, Henry Ford remarked, "I want to save that moment. My good friend was here." He did that by having the workers come up here and nailing the chair to the floor in the spot that Tom Edison sat. So since 1929, we tried to preserve that spot. And so that when we did a restoration of the floor, we went around the original area so we wouldn't disturb that area. December 31st, 1879, not only did he have this laboratory lit, he also had Christie Street, those white posts with the big bubble lights there. Those were wired for electricity, and a little further up is where Sarah Jordan's boarding house would be the first house in the world to have electric lights. Also, he would run wires into his own house a little further up Christie Street, and Charlie Batchelor, one of the men that worked for him, his house was wired as well. But Sarah Jordan's the only house that exists today. And so if you haven't seen that, by all means, go down the street and take a look at Sarah Jordan's boarding house, okay?